The Canadian Rockies, a prominent mountain range home to some of Canada's most spectacular views and multiple national parks, one of them being Canada's most visited Banff National Park. And I found out that the 1,000-kilometer long Great Divide Trail goes right through the park, and I was curious if it was possible to hike a shorter section while passing by some of its iconic regions. So I found a 100-kilometer stretch where I could experience the remote Canadian Rockies, starting not far from the town of Banff, crossing multiple high mountain passes through alpine meadows, old-growth forests, and glacially fed lakes. But this beautiful area where wild berries grow in abundance is also home to both black and grizzly bears, the top predators in the mountain, so I had to be extra cautious. And when you add to that the regular storms and unpredictable weather in the mountains, there were some challenges that I had to face. Hey there! But more on that later. For now, let's start from the very beginning. Even though Banff National Park is Canada's most visited national park, it is such a huge park that one can easily escape the crowds and find quiet and remote hiking trails. Hiking in early August was a prime time for the wildflowers, but for the buffalo berries as well, one of the main food sources for the bears in the area. So that's why I have to have handy a bear spray, just in case I have some close encounters with the bears. Hopefully there won't be any. The first 14 kilometers of the trail were mostly flat, passing by an old forest filled with lichen, with the occasional sign to remind us that we are still in bear country. At this junction, I could choose to continue to the more mellow Assiniboine Pass or through the more strenuous but scenic Wonder Pass. The Wonder Pass it was, and soon after that, some light rain started to fall again. Okay. Passing by the tall and wet willow shrubs, my clothes also got wet in no time. But as the saying goes, if you don't like the weather in the Canadian Rockies, just wait 15 minutes and it's probably going to change. And sure enough, the sun was again out in no time. Higher up and above the forest, Marvel Lake and the prominent peaks of the Canadian Rockies started to appear. The trail kept climbing up to the alpine area through this beautiful meadow until I reached the Wonder Pass. This pass is also right along the continental divide, dividing the watersheds between the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans. No wonder why they call it Wonder Pass. It's so beautiful. On the other side of the pass, the trail continued along the wildflowers, larches, and a few marmots and ground squirrels. And soon enough, I reached the Magog Lake with a close view of the iconic Mount Assiniboine, also called the Matterhorn of the Canadian Rockies. From here I had another 5 kilometers along the alpine meadow on the way to the campsite. Eventually I made it to the Og Leg campsite. Here one has to book their campsites in advance in order to avoid overcrowding. And after a long 36-kilometer day and being right next to a lake, I had to jump in for a cold and refreshing dip. I then soaked up my dinner and set up my tent for the night. All the campsites here also have these bear safe lockers to store your food away from your tent and hopefully allow you to sleep a little better during the night. It had rained during the night, so I started the day with drying off the tent, but then some more rain started to fall, so I decided to wait for it to stop before packing everything. And to prevent my upper body from getting wet from the willow shrubs, While still having some nice ventilation, I used this light poncho. I was then passing by this forest filled with a variety of mushrooms from all the rain we have received over the last few weeks. I then stumbled upon some fresh bear prints right on the trail, so I made sure to make noise and stay alert for any bears that pass through this area. Hey bear!
In the morning I only had 300 ml of water because it looked like there would be more water sources along the way, but there have not been a single water source, so it's quite a bit more challenging when you're dehydrated. I'm here in a creek right here, so I'm going to check it out. Oh, some water would be very nice right now. Oh yeah! Oh, it's raining. I decided to stop under this tree and eat a snack and wait for the cloud to pass.
At Citadel Pass, the trail crosses the Continental Divide again, leaving the Mount Assiniboine Provincial Park behind and entering back into Banff National Park.
Hello, Mr. Marmot.
I then made it to the Howard Douglas Lake and the campsite that I had booked right next to the lake.
My fingers got too cold and it's hard to open up the backpack.
We had dinner with Justin, a GDT hiker, and 2 other families, and then it was time to set up the tent and hunker down for the night. This was supposed to be another 35-kilometer day, and thankfully the forecast was for sunny weather all day. From here in the distance, the ski slopes and the lifts of the Sunshine Valley Ski Resort appeared. The trail here crossed the Continental Divide again, passing right through the ski resort. Here I met with Justin again, who hikes the much longer Great Divide Trail. We hiked together for a bit, but we had to say goodbye as I wanted to slow down and film the beauty of the trail. I was crossing again a large tree forest and the wildflower-filled meadows. Eventually I reached the Healy Pass with scenic views of the surrounding peaks. From here I was descending into the next valley and reached this junction, from where I left the Great Divide Trail and continued north to the Shadow Lake.
The trail got quite a bit more quiet here after the last junction, and also it's so much nicer to hike when it's nice weather and you have plenty of water. Lesson learned.
I saw some berries right next to the trail and I couldn't resist and tried some of the food for the bears.
The trail provides some snacks.
Here in the boggy area on the way to the Shadow Lake Lodge, they had also installed this wooden deck, making for a flat and much more mellow hiking. I arrived at the campsite, chose a spot for my tent, but just another 15 minutes away from here was the actual Shadow Lake.
We made it to Shadow Lake. It is indeed in the shade. There are glaciers above. I'm tired. Let's jump in.
After the dip in the lake, it was time for the well-deserved dinner. Setting up camp under a tree, there was no morning dew, and so it was much faster and much more enjoyable to pack a dry tent. I left the campsite for my last day on trail and headed up for the last major pass for this trip. Up by Gibbon Pass, we could also see Storm Mountain ahead, and as the name suggests, the peak was absorbed by a storm cloud. On this day, I would also be passing by multiple lakes on the way to the Highway 93 South. And here is me trying to communicate with the spruce grouse or ptarmigan.
From here I can pretty much tighten the shoes because it's all downhill from here for the last kilometers to the highway. Back into some higher vegetation, and I can already hear the cars down there from the highway.
I passed by Vista Lake, continued with a short climb, and after 4 days of hiking, and thankfully no bear encounters, I reached the highway and the final destination for this trip. But there was another mini adventure ahead to try to get back to my car, which included a hitchhike ride to Banff, bus to Canmore, and 4 other hitchhike rides to make it back to the trailhead.
What a trip! Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.